Welcome to the Biz Gone Social podcast. We help entrepreneurs navigate how to get known, get customers, and get the edge over their competition. Here is your host, Lorraine Duncan.
So here we are on the Biz Gone Social podcast, and I am so glad to be here. My promise to you, as always, is I want to give you a little bit of verbal caffeine that's going to energize your business and help you stay social. Because after all, don't you want to be the business that everyone's talking about? I know I do. And welcome, George Morris. Great to have you.
Thanks, Lorraine. I'm glad to be here, and I'm also caffeinating with the yerba mate, so that's great.
Awesome. So tell my audience a little bit about who you are, what you do, and who you serve.
I am an entrepreneur. I've been that way for a quarter century now. God, I'm old. And I used to have a digital marketing agency software company, got out of that, helped a couple colleagues of mine scale, grow, and get their businesses acquired. And so now I have landed on being a scaling up coach, where I come in and I help businesses grow, basically double revenue every 2 or 3 years. That's the ideal that we're shooting for.
That's awesome. So you owned a digital agency. That's really kind of cool.
It was fun,
I guess. No, I'm just kidding. So, we all talk about being entrepreneurs, and you have your own business now. What is probably the biggest mistake you made in your business as an entrepreneur?
Only one?
Just the biggest.
The biggest. I'll tell you my biggest. So I had my agency for basically 14 years. We did great. We were our fastest growing company. Everything was clicking along there for a while. And at one point, we had a large client, and it's a very well-known large client. And we were working with them for about 1.5 years. And they came back to us and said, hey, look, can you be our agency of record? And we said, yes, absolutely, we'll be your agency of record. And we gave them a 4-year proposal of what that would look like. It would actually have 5x our revenue if we signed the contract. And it would require us to grow by adding a lot of people. Anyway, so we gave them a proposal since we were enjoying working with them. And I started making a lot of changes in the company because the president was telling us, hey, yes, you're going to do this. We're going to work with you guys. And prior to this, I never let any client make up more than 20% of my revenue, and everything was signature based. I would not move forward without a signature. But because of the relationship, I said, forget the signature. I started getting rid of clients to make room. I started hiring employees because I had to. I had to double the size of the agency almost overnight. And one of my strategists came back and said, they're going to actually have a loss in revenue. And I'm like, no, they're not. They're saying they're going to have a gain in revenue. He's like, no, they're going to have a substantial loss. So months went on, nothing from the client. And then 1 month after the new year, they came back and said, we have a major revenue loss. We have to freeze all work going forward. And I was left holding the bag. And I had to go back to clients I fired. I had to reduce the size of the company. I had to get out of our office lease. It was a major debacle because I just went on the vibe of the relationship rather than getting a signature.
Wow. And how did you overcome that? I mean, how does one overcome that?
Well, you can either overcome it or not overcome it. And I think in this case, we didn't overcome it, right? We cut the agency back by a ton and we tried to recover. And ultimately, for me, after a year after that, I just saw the writing on the wall. And I'm like, we had another factor applying to us too, because in the Boulder area, Google moved in and a lot of other high tech firms moved in. So my average salary for my employees at the time, and this was around 2013, went from about $70,000 per employee up to $120,000 per employee in about 2 years. And so I couldn't double my fees, but that was the expense increase for the talent because everybody wanted the talent. And you had Salesforce and Google paying top dollar for the talent I used to have. And so I saw the writing on the wall and I got out. My business partner, he ran the business for another year and he went bankrupt. So I didn't recover. I jumped into another area, and that was the moral of the story.
Was that like the biggest factor though? Like, what was like what really led you to coaching? Like, what was like that defining moment that said, you know what, I want to be a coach? What made you do that?
I was told to. What actually happened was I joined the entrepreneur organization, so EO, with a bunch of great entrepreneurs, which helped me grow the business for a while. And what I found is I really loved working with other entrepreneurs. I loved coming up with ideas and systems and all of that. And when I got out of the agency, I dabbled in coaching for a while, but I didn't have a structure or a framework to reference back to. And so after the last acquisition, I left the company that helped get acquired. And a colleague of mine in EO pulled me aside. He goes, "Don't go starting some blockchain company, George. You're going to be a coach." And I'm like, "Well, that was really direct to you." And he's like, "You'll love this. Go do it." So I got certified as a scaling up coach, and I've had my absolute best years as a scaling up coach.
Wow, that's awesome. You know, a lot of people, you know, when they hire a coach, it's, you know, it's in a lot of cases, especially like if it's in the executive area, they want to, they get a new position and they want to actually be a great leader.
Yeah.
And so in like, what makes a great leader?
A great team is what I would say. When I'm coaching my clients are really anywhere from $1 million. My biggest client's 150 million. And I coach them essentially the same way. It doesn't really matter because for me, it's really about the CEO is my main client, but the CEO is completely useless without the team around them, the executive team around them. So a lot of the work that we start doing together, we have these lofty goals when it comes to revenue and market share and stuff like that. But we start with the team dynamics and we focus on the work of Patrick Lencioni. It's called the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And so we start with trust. And with trust, we get to conflict. And I want a team that has high conflict with the CEO. And I'm not talking about getting angry and yelling at each other. I'm talking about generative conflict where we have disagreements and we're creating the best ideas through our disagreements. And that's kind of where we start. That's how I can tell if we have a great leader. If we have a great leader and we have a team around them that will actually conflict with them and they don't get their egos all bent out of shape, that's usually a really good sign that we got the right ingredients.
Yeah, I would say that ego plays a great role in that because it must be hard to lead a team with a bunch of egos like crazy. When you think of leadership, like what leaders do you admire the most?
Personally?
Yeah, and why?
For different reasons. I would say I'm going to give an answer that's probably a really common answer is I respect Elon Musk and what he's been able to do. I don't necessarily like his style, but I respect what he's been able to do. He's very clear about what he is trying to accomplish, and he's very driven to get there. And he's very clear about if you agree with my principles, you'll like it here, maybe. But if you don't like what I have to say, if you don't like my direction, there's the door. And then so I respect that aspect of him. Other areas, not so much. In terms of the leaders that I think have done a really good job is the Jeff Bezoses of the world. I've really respected him in terms of what he's been able to do. And I also think there's a lot of like lesser known leaders that aren't name brands. If I were to mention them, probably go in one ear and out the other because people are like, I don't know who they are. But one of them that's passed away a few years ago is Tony Hsieh from Zappos. I think he was a fantastic leader, really focused on his team, the culture, and the output. He created a great organization with Zappos. And I don't think he's celebrated enough for what he's accomplished. But some of those lesser known leaders, I have a lot of respect for.
With working with leaders and, and also just different companies and CEOs and stuff like that. What do you think companies overlook the most?
I think they overlook the team. I think they overlook the soft skills. It's really easy to take a look at talent in terms of skill set. I think it's easy to take a look at education and experience. All those things are easy to look at. The harder thing to figure out is how the team works together, the trust within the team, the accountability within the team, the level of conflict within a team. Those things are really hard to quantify. They're really hard to look at. But if you think of, if you reflect on what were the best teams that I was a part of, and that could be anything from like a nonprofit to a business to a sports team. If you reflect on it, it's usually a high degree of accountability and people call each other out on things, but they respect each other simultaneously and they see that everyone's putting in an equal level of effort. So you're inspired to work with the team. And that's hard to quantify. And I think that's why a lot of people don't look at it. But I've seen teams that function this way and they're night and day better than any other team.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is the part of the show. I'm going to switch gears here a little bit where we get a little real. What do you like most about being an entrepreneur?
Oh, freedom, the ability to control what I do, when I do it, and how I do it. I'm very, one of my core values is bravely follow curiosity. So I need to be in a place where if my curiosity is piqued, I have the room to investigate that and dig deeper into it. If I'm restricted by someone else's schedule, I find it very hard to do that. And therefore I just don't get energy out of it. So for me, that part about being an entrepreneur is keystone to that. I
love that. Everybody sees business when you own your own business as like they see the glamour in it. It's like, and both you and I know that, it's not so glamorous sometimes. Sometimes we struggle. We have a struggle. What would you say in today's world is your biggest struggle when it comes to being an entrepreneur?
Ooh, we're going to go deep, maybe go deep in a rabbit hole here. I would say, honestly, it is how to think about AI is my biggest struggle as an entrepreneur. I go deep down the AI rabbit hole and I can see the kind of work that it is doing currently and the kind of work it's going to be capable of doing here in the not too distant, like end of 2024 future, which really gives me pause in the terms of the work that I do and how I do it. I can actually see it replacing myself. I can see it replacing therapy. I can see it replacing mentorship. I can see it replacing a lot of things within 5 years, maybe even less. And so it's tricky. And I know a lot of people talk about, oh, it's just going to augment us. I think that's a timeline thing. Yes, it will augment us for a while until it gets better than us. And so it makes me think about, how do I continue to grow my practice and grow as an entrepreneur and lead others in growing maybe in white collar professions that are also going to be drastically redefined or eliminated in the next 5 to 10 years. So it's this interesting conundrum. I love the tool set and what it brings, but I'm also scared as hell in terms of what does that mean for the future? So I think that for me, that's the biggest current struggle.
And lastly, one piece of advice that you can give someone who is either so it would be universal piece of advice to help them move forward, who's either like a startup, seasoned entrepreneur, or someone who's thinking of owning their own business.
I would think a piece of advice would be different for both of them. I would say for the one thinking about starting their own business, personally, I think you have to go find someone to start it with, because it's a lot easier to start a business with someone because they'll move you forward in the times where you're stuck and you can collaborate off each other and sharpen each other. So that would be my first thing for someone starting a business, find someone to do it with. For the established entrepreneur or someone looking to grow their business, in that scenario, I would say look for a peer group. EO was fantastic for me for that, being able to work with colleagues that are in different businesses to hear kind of what are their struggles and how can I learn from the experiences that they are having. So I'm not reinventing the wheel. Somebody else has dealt with something. Tell me how you've dealt with it. I'll make it my own. So join a peer group or find a partner. That's what I would say.
I love that. If someone resonated with you today or needs to get in touch with you or wants to work with you, how would they do that?
Just go to gmorris.com. Everything they need is up there.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for being such an awesome guest. And until next week, everyone, I'll see you soon. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Biz Gone Social podcast. Find us on Instagram at BizGoneSocial for extra tips. Check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, stay social.